A warm welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, amidst the Eid celebrations going on around the world and the prayers for the progress of our nation and recent global diplomatic events, we've decided to take a look into the perception of Nigeria on the international scene, her foreign policy under the President's administration, and other global events from the Nigerian perspective. My guest this week is a retired career diplomat. He's best known as Nigeria's former High Commissioner to Australia, but he served in other missions as well, in Belgium, the US, and in Kenya. Ambassador Ayo Olukani also served in the permanent mission of Nigeria to the United Nations in New York, covering, among others, the work of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th committees of the UN, as well as the Security Council. In his resume, you'll find that he was involved in the work of the UN, spanning economic and financial matters, South-South cooperation, technical cooperation among developing countries, social, cultural, and humanitarian and legal affairs, as well as peace and conflict resolution and UN peacekeeping operations. When he was done with foreign service, he returned to Nigeria to serve as Director General, Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, a position he held until 2022. But first, let's check in on other developments in diplomatic circles.
We do not appreciate the tone in
Danish Foreign Minister Lars Rasmussen has criticized remarks made by US Vice President J.D. Vance over Washington's influence in Greenland, stressing that Copenhagen does not appreciate the tone. He also emphasized that the status quo is not an option for the Arctic, mentioning the $1 billion investment in the region's security to provide more drones, ships and personnel. The comments come as a response to Vance's speech during his visit to the Pitufik space base in Greenland on Friday. The Prime Minister said that Denmark underinvested in the people and security of Greenland, urging the country to change this approach.
In 1945, the United States had 17 bases and military installations in Greenland with thousands of soldiers. Today, only one American base is left, the one Vice President Vance visited a few hours ago, and something like 200 soldiers. We can do more, much more, within the framework we have today. Let us make use of that, and let us do it together. The Vice President also stated that Denmark has done too little in the Arctic. The other day, he said that the United States has also done too little. And the fact is that we have all been harvesting the peace dividend. We all acted on the assumption that the Arctic was and should be a low-tension area. But that time is over. Status quo is not an option. And that is why we have stepped up as well. With $1 billion investment in Arctic security just a few weeks ago, an investment that will provide more drones, more ships, more personnel, and more will come later this year.
Spokesperson for the Chadian National Army, General Chanani Ashik, has reiterated his country's neutrality towards Sudan's ongoing conflict, but warned of retaliation if the country's airports are attacked. Speaking at a press conference in N'Djamena on Saturday, he said while some, like General Yasser al-Attah, seek an attack on our airports as legitimate, others threaten to advance into Chad, a mistake they will regret. We consider these remarks not fortuitous, but a declaration of war. The Chadian National Army reserves the right to respond and will fiercely defend our territory with all means at its disposal." End quote. The ongoing conflict between the Sudanese army and the RSF that began in April 2023 has now resulted in over 20,000 deaths, 33,000 injuries, and the displacement of approximately 12 million people. Finally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says military pressure by the IDF on Hamas is working because it is acting simultaneously. On one hand, crushing Hamas military and government capabilities, on the other hand, creating conditions for the release of the hostages still being held by Hamas. Mr. Netanyahu said this in a video address on Sunday. He also spoke about Hezbollah in Lebanon, where he says there is very firm reinforcement without compromise.
דברים שאתה דורש ממישהו שאתה מכבד אותו.
Welcome back. How is Nigeria perceived on the global stage? And has President Bola Tinubu's trips abroad convinced investors that this is a great place to invest? During a ministerial press briefing a few weeks ago, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investments, Jumoke Oduwole, disclosed that 30 foreign trips made by the president attracted proposed investments worth $50.8 billion into the country. According to the minister, that's about the amount the Nigerian economy needs to be steady in terms of foreign exchange. The president, she says, already generated much more investments through his official visits to foreign countries. She also stated that Nigeria has expanded trade and investment discussions with 5 key global economies, Brazil, India, France, and the United Arab Emirates, to boost economic growth and create wealth for its citizens. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, stated that Nigeria's relations with China have grown stronger and firmer. There are no more trade tariffs on Nigerian cashews and nuts by China. Nigeria spearheaded the global alliances and achieved diplomatic milestones. With President Tinubu taking on chairmanship of the ECOWAS and chairing pivotal summits, the re-election of Ambassador Bankole Adeoye as AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, retention of Nigeria's seat on the African Peace and Security Council in the African Union for another 3 years, a membership of BRICS, and now regular invitee to the G20, and the new African Energy Bank and African Central Bank that will be headquartered in Nigeria. I want to bring in now former Nigerian High Commissioner to Australia, Ambassador Ayo Olukani. Ambassador Olukani served in the permanent mission of Nigeria to the United Nations in New York, covering, among others, the work of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th committees of the UN, as well as the Security Council. In his resume, as I said earlier, you'll find that he was involved in the work of the UN, spanning economic and financial matters, South-South cooperation, technical cooperation among developing countries, social, cultural, and humanitarian and legal affairs, as well as peace and conflict resolution and UN peacekeeping operations. When he was done with foreign service, he returned to Nigeria to serve as the Director General, Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, a position he held until 2022. Ambassador Olukani, thank you for joining us on the program, and a happy birthday. Incidentally, you and President Tinubu share the same birth month.
Thank you very much. I think it's really a big honor to share the same birth month with Mr. President. Mr. President, 73, me now 70. I prescribe myself about 70. But I think it was an honor, honestly, to have shared the same month with Mr. President. And I'm very, very glad. 10. Like they say, to God be the glory.
Yeah, 70 and not looking it, and still very active. Ambassador, we're so glad that you're able to join us. How
my body is telling me I'm 70, even if my face is not showing it.
Well, you're only as young as you feel. So how has life been like for you since you left diplomatic service?
One way or the other, you can say that I did not totally leave the diplomatic service. I've been involved in speaking engagement. Also, of course, I also serve as the chair of the Board of Trustees of the UN Association of Nigeria. So that means I'm involved in UN activities, promoting the effectiveness of the UN on ground. But apart from that, I served as 4 years as Director General of NASIMA. And so you could say that I moved from the private sector, from the public sector to the private sector. But when I got into the private sector as Director General of NASIMA, international economic relations between Nigeria in context of private sector engagement was what I've been involved in. So Technically, I can't say that I've left diplomacy. It is still part and parcel of what I do. And of course, the first few years, 2000, when I left, I was also involved with some meetings involving the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So it's like I'm still within St. Luke, the same Misaki too as well.
Right, so you're still in the mix of things, and that, really makes me glad because I'm sure that you have been observing the progression of Nigeria's foreign policy, and I'm so glad that, under this administration, the Tinubu administration, it is anchored on the 4 Ds: democracy, development, demography, diaspora. The end goal, according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, is development. How do you understand this?
Well, I'm very delighted that we do have a framework to pursue the foreign policy under the President Tinubu administration. I think it's always very necessary to have a roadmap. And I see these as one of the very important things, because if you tie it all together, you will see that it makes sense. The question of implementation. Democracy, effective democracy, governance issues. I will assure you that you have a stable policy. In terms of a stable policy, then it means that foreign direct investment, which President Tinubu himself has been pursuing through his trip, will be encouraged in terms of coming in as far as the democratic credentials are concerned. Then, of course, you have the demographic aspect of it is key, very, very important. It used to be said that 1 out of every 4 Africans is a Nigerian. 220 now, 230. That's a huge figure. I once served in a country where the total population is just about 85,000. I also was in a country where
that's a small village. Yeah.
Now look at Nigeria, 200. This is a solid credentials in terms of attracting foreign direct investment. It's not for nothing that the telecom giants are dogging in here, and also the same thing in terms of more car companies. Everybody wants to be in Nigeria for obvious reasons. All you need, for example, is just to capture the area of Agege for your product. If it is milk you're selling, if it is biscuit, you're rest assured. Then, of course, the diaspora content of it is very important. In context of my, against the background of my own experience, 35 years in the foreign service, the Nigerian diaspora is solid. And of course, the remittances from the diaspora is a big component part of our GDP today. When you're talking about $34 billion, some people say as much as $40 billion. That is a lot of money for an economy like ours. So that is why the question and importance of the diaspora is key and very important. If I can give you an example, while I was in Perth, while I was in Australia, Western Australia was a very important area for us because of the mining, because Nigeria was very interested in mining, and we got an agreement between Nigeria and Australia in 4 areas: mining, agri, energy, and financial resources. But apart from that, the Nigerian diaspora in Australia, high-level professionals, there are over 100 Nigerian doctors in Perth, over 100. And I'm not talking about doctors who have just done, who have just left. And no, a lot of them are professors, specialization. We have O&G, you have family medicine. That is a reflection of the quality of the Nigerian diaspora. And I'm indeed very glad we are tapping into this as far as that is concerned. And those are none of the things. I once wrote an article when I was in Australia, Nigerians at the End of the Earth. That was after I presented my credential in New Zealand. Even in New Zealand, you have a lot of Nigerians. Even in Vanuatu, you have a lot of Nigerians. Ironically, if you look at Papua New Guinea, which I also covered, the PNG LNG, the project accountant happens to be a Nigerian. So this is a reflection of the quality of people we have in Nigeria. While I was in Nairobi in Kenya, we also covered Seychelles, 85,000 people, maybe Seychelles now, maybe 100. But the only medical doctors in the island of Prelate, Dr. Edo, is Nigerian. The chief medical director is Nigerian. The director of Agri was Nigerian. Then in the area of the infrastructure, the stadium that was constructed, a Nigerian was the consultant. So this is a reflection of why the diaspora, and I'm indeed very glad that within the context of Nigeria's foreign policy now, the issues of diaspora is key and very important. And I think Honorable Abike, of course, is doing a great job through NIDCOM as far as tying everything together. Now, fast forward, tie all of this into development. This is why the 4D diplomacy, of course, if you look at it, if you look at the threat, development is at the end of it, and the well-being of the people. But at the end of the day, I think the question of three issues: implementation, implementation, implementation. This should be the matter of the heart for us, and it should be the heart of the matter.
So Nigeria is seeking foreign direct investment. We're also seeking extra funding for a lot of things. And I know that many diplomatic missions are struggling across the world. There are some where Nigerian staff are not being paid, have been owed for months. I do have sources telling me that in some parts of the world, that some of the staff are making bank overdrafts in order to survive. They had to do that for, the festive season.
It's an open secret. It's an open secret that many of our missions staff are funded. Many of the mission staff are not well paid, have not paid. Some of them have not even received their allowances, maybe in the past 3, 4, 5 months. It's an open secret. I mean, we're not revealing anything, a secret here. And I think this is an issue which must be addressed in terms of repositioning our missions to be able to function effectively.
How different is it, the scenario then when you were ambassador and now? How different is it? How wide is the gap?
Well, we also, even during my period too, we had some dry spell, like this, in which FSA would not come. But I can't remember we had the situation in which for 4 or 5 months we were not paid FSA. Maybe perhaps sometimes 2 months, maybe 3 months maximum, thereabout. But we did struggle with funds. But now I think we need to do something, because I'm in touch with some of my colleagues. I mean, some of the younger colleagues who are out there in the mission. And I do hear stories about them not being paid adequately, not being paid foreign service allowance for a long period. And I think this is something we should use this opportunity to stop something like that, so that missions are effectively funded as far as that is concerned, so people are not just going around in terms of scrounging. How can you concentrate on your work? And of course, you're exposing such a diplomat to all sorts of temptation in such situation.
You had mentioned the U.S. President Donald Trump, and he's been imposing tariffs across the world. There are reports that he has his eyes on Africa. He has some travel bans gearing up, for certain countries on the continent, as well as possible trade tariffs. How should Nigeria lead the continent? Because I've heard in some circles, it's for Africa, it is better that, Africa relates with the U.S. as a continent. They come together as a voice rather than dealing with him on an individual basis, country by country basis.
Well, honestly, maybe that will be a scenario for, an utopian scenario in terms of what? The excellent diplomatic relations, bilateral relations between countries will continue to sustain. So our relations between Nigeria and the U.S. will continue. I served in the PAM mission, New York, which is to the mission, which is that's multilateral. But I also do understand, of course, we do have relations with the U.S. It's broad spectrum in various areas. Economic, we have military links, we also have consular link, we also have cultural link too as well. These are component parts of our relationship, between ourselves. So that will continue to sustain, and we'll continue to work on that and continue to nurture that. The Trump administration, when he came the first time, we dealt with the Trump administration. We had our own strategic relationship between the Trump administration and Nigeria. The same thing at this particular period. Even if we're looking at the question and issues of the immigration issues, and things like that, it will still continue to be a question of bilateral relationship between the two countries. And if you look at the Nigerian diaspora, if you look at Nigeria, you'll still be shocked that a lot of universities, research institutions are still giving either awarding scholarship or inviting Nigeria. So there is a people-to-people relationship aspect of diplomatic ties. And of course, this will not stop under Trump, under President Trump. It will not stop. It will continue. There's a larger picture, in terms of the question. Let me say something, Amarachi. At the period that we are in now, the era of Twitter diplomacy, in which with just your tweet, you can issue diplomatic standpoint. I'm moving the embassy from this place to that place. This set of Africans or Nigerians will not be allowed. Tariffs will be, that is what they call it, Twitter diplomacy in 140 characters. I mean, because, your tweet should be not more than 140 characters. But there is still deeper aspect, deeper area as far as that is concerned. And I have very many examples to give as far as that is concerned. But for me, honestly speaking, and I'm sorry to divert onto this question of Africa-France summit, Africa-Japan summit, Africa. I don't think we should go that way at all. I don't think we should go. As best we can send our officials to go and therefore, but for our head of state to all be asked to come to Japan or FOCA, come to China to come and talk. No. I think it's about time we break away from this. If those countries want to engage us as Africans, our officials can go. Not even our foreign ministers. Maybe perhaps our trade ministers, Minister of Commerce, and all that, but definitely not our head of state. I think this is one of the things I think we should back away from.
Ambassador Ayolukani, you said a lot on the program. Thank you again. This is one of those rare moments to be able to catch you because you were so busy ever since you left diplomatic service, but you're always welcome whenever you want on Diplomatic Channel. Thanks again for joining us today.
Before we leave, can I just say something briefly? And that has to do with the question which you raised in terms of the perception of Nigeria. I tell a small little story. When I was in Nairobi, in Kenya, there was an advertisement, 3 bad ideas it caused. And that advertisement, they were advertising a car. And they said that 3 bad ideas. 1, going up country without buying something for Chuchu, that is a grandmother during Christmas. Secondly, buying anything over the internet from Nigeria. Then the third thing was buying a car without checking the Chevy Aveo. And of course, it was terrible. How can Nigeria be dragged in the mud that way? So I wrote a letter to the GM of in Kenya that no, you can't say that it's a bad idea to buy. This was 2003. And of course, they apologized to Nigerians, apologized to the High Commission, saying that we're sorry, we have said something like this. It does not mean GM Global guidelines for advertisement. And they put in. So the perception of Nigeria as quote and unquote, these countries that things are not working and things like that, 419, scamming and things like that, is more of the perception. There's real, there's no doubt about it. But that's not the whole story about Nigeria. Because there's always danger of a single story, like Chimamanda said in our talk, dangers of a single story. A lot of things are going on. Good things are going on the part of Nigeria. And I think that within the context of the 4D diplomacy, we will hopefully be able to do something and push forward the potentials of our country so that this so much called potential can, at the end of the day, be realized. I'm an incredible optimist as far as Nigeria. For me, Nigeria is the heart of the matter and it's a matter of the heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For all the times I've known you, you've always been an optimist. Ambassador Lukani, a pleasure again having you on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. And thank you. Keep up the work, good work you're doing.
And that's it on this edition of the program. Don't forget you can watch previous episodes if you missed them, especially the more recent ones. Just go to the channel's TV page on YouTube, search the playlist, and you can click on Diplomatic Channel. All of the episodes are there, so you can watch at your own time. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.